Hi Year 6 and welcome to your second reading session of the week. So we're going to read up to a certain point in chapter 2, almost finish it, but just before we're going to stop because I would like you guys to make a prediction at the end of it. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to read along with me, really make sure you're understanding what happens next in the chapter, because then based on what we read you're going to make a prediction and you're going to write a prediction in your English books we gave you, in those lined books we gave you. So make sure you're reading along with me, following the story. It was nearly night when they had crossed over. The wind broke up the grey clouds, and a wandering moon appeared above the hills between the flying rags. Then they stopped, and Thorin muttered something about supper, and where shall we get a dry patch to sleep on? Not until then did they notice that Gandalf was missing. So far he had come all the way with them, never saying if he was in the adventure or merely keeping them company for a while. He had eaten most, talked most, and laughed most, but now he simply was not there at all. "Just when a wizard would have been most useful too," groaned Dori and Nori, who shared the hobbits' views about regular meals, plenty and often. They decided in the end that they would have to camp where they were. They moved to a clump of trees, and though it was drier under them, the wind shook the rain off the leaves, and the drip, drip was most annoying. Also, the mischief seemed to have got into the fire. Dwarves can make a fire almost anywhere out of almost anything, wind or no wind, but they could not do it that night, not even Oin and Gloin, who were specially good at it. Then one of the ponies took fright at nothing and bolted. He got into the river before they could catch him, and before they could get him out again. Billy and Killy were nearly drowned, and all the baggage that he carried was washed away off him. Of course it was mostly food, and there was mighty little left for supper, and less for breakfast. There they all sat, glum and wet and muttering, while Oin and Gloin were trying to light the fire, and quarrelling about it. Bilbo was sadly reflecting that adventures are not all pony rides in May sunshine, when Balin, who was always their lookout, said, "There's a light over there." There was a hill some way off with trees on it, pretty thick in parts. Out of the dark mass of the trees they could see a light shining, a reddish, comfortable-looking light, as it might be a fire or torches twinkling. When they had looked at it for some time, they fell to arguing. Some said no, and some said yes. Some said they should go and see, and anything was better than a little supper, less breakfast and wet clothes all the night. Others said, "These parts are none too well known, and are too near the mountains. Travellers seldom come this way now. The old maps are no use. Things have changed for the worse, and the road is unguarded. They have seldom ever heard of kings round here, and the less inquisitive you are as you go along, the less trouble you are likely to find," some said. "After all, there are 14 of us," others said. "Where has Gandalf got to?" This remark was repeated by everybody. Then the rain began to pour down worse than ever, and Oin and Gloin began to fight. That settled it. "After all, we have got a burglar with us," they said, and so they made off, leading their ponies, with all due and proper caution, in the direction of the light. They came to the hill, and were soon in the wood. Up the hill they went, but there was no proper path to be seen, such as might lead to a house or a farm, and do what they could they made a deal of rustling and crackling and creaking, and a good deal of grumbling and dratting, as they went through the trees in the pitch dark. Suddenly the red light shone out very bright through the tree trunks not far ahead. "Now it's the burglar's turn," they said, meaning Bilbo. "You must go on and find out all about that light and what it is for, and if it all is perfectly safe and canny," said Thorin to the hobbit. "Now scuttle off and come back quick if all is well. If not, come back if you can. If you can't, hoot twice like a barn owl and once like a screech owl, and we will do what we can." Off Bilbo had to go, before he could explain that he could not hoot even once like any kind of owl, any more than fly like a bat. But at any rate, hobbits can move quickly in woods, absolutely quietly. They take pride in it, and Bilbo had sniffed more than once at what he called all this dwarvish racket as they went along, though I don't suppose you or I would have noticed anything at all on a windy night, not if the whole cavalcade had passed 2 feet off. As for Bilbo, walking primly towards the red light, I don't suppose even a weasel would have stirred a whisker at it, So naturally, he got right up to the fire, for fire it was, without disturbing anything, and this is what he saw. 3 very large persons sitting round a very large fire of beech logs. They were toasting mutton on long spits of wood and licking the gravy off their fingers. There was a fine toothsome smell. Also, there was a barrel of good drink at hand, and they were drinking out of jugs, but they were trolls. Obviously trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life, could see that. From the great heavy faces of them, and their size and the shape of their legs, not to mention their language, which was not drawing-room fashion at all. "Mutton yesterday, mutton today, and blimey, if it don't look like mutton again tomorrow," said one of the trolls. "Never a blinking bit of man-flesh have we had for long enough," said a second. "What the hell, William, was I thinking of to bring us to these parts at all, beats me, and the drink running short what's more," he said, jogging the elbow of William, who was taking a pull at his jug. William choked. "Shut your mouth," he said, as soon as he could. "You can't expect folk to stop here for even just to be with you, Bert. You've ate a whole village and a half since we came down from the mountains. How much more do you want? And time's been up our way. What you haven't said, thank you, Bill, for a nice bit of fat old mutton, that's what it is." He took a big bite off a sheep's leg he was roasting and wiped his lips on his sleeve. "Yes, I'm afraid trolls do behave like that, even those with only one head each." After hearing all this, Bilbo ought to have done something at once. Either he should have gone back quietly and warned his friends that there were 3 fair-sized trolls at hand in a nasty mood, quite likely to roast a dwarf, or even pony for a change, or else he should have done a bit of good, quick burgling. A really first-class and legendary burglar would at this point have picked the troll's pockets. It is nearly always worthwhile if you can manage it. Pinched the very mutton off the spits, purloined the beer, and walked off with them there noticing him. Others, more practical but with less professional pride, would perhaps have stuck a dagger into each one before they observed it. Then the night could have been spent cheerily. Bilbo knew it. He had read of a good many things he had never seen or done. He was very much alarmed as well as disgusted. He wished himself 100 miles away, and yet somehow he could not go straight back to Thorin and company empty-handed. So he stood and hesitated in the shadows. Of the various burglaricious proceedings he had heard of, picking the troll's pocket seemed the least difficult. So at last he crept behind a tree just behind William. Bert and Tom went off to the barrel. William was having another drink. Then Bilbo plucked up courage and put his little hand in William's enormous pocket. There was a purse in it, as big as a bag to Bilbo. "Ha!" thought he, warming to his new work as he lifted it carefully out. "This is a beginning." It was. Trolls' perches are the mischief, and this was no exception. "Who are you?" it squeaked as it left the pocket, and William turned round at once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could have ducked behind the tree. "Blimey, Bert, look what I've copped," said William. "What is it?" said the others, coming up. "Lummy if I knows. What are you?" Bilbo Baggins, Burra, a hobbit," said Bilbo, shaking all at once, and wondering how to make owl noises before they throttled him. "A Burra hobbit?" said they, a bit startled. Trolls are slow in the uptake, and mighty suspicious about anything new to them. "What's a Burra hobbit got to do with my pocket, anyways?" said William. "And can you cook 'em?" said Tom. "You can try," said Bert, picking up a skewer. "Oh, he wouldn't make above a mouthful," said William, who had already had a fine supper. "Not when he was skin and boned." And okay, we're going to stop there today. So obviously you've been reading along, and Bilbo's just been caught by the trolls. Okay, now I know the trolls don't sound like very nice characters, do they? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a prediction. I'd like you to write a very short paragraph about what you think is going to happen to Bilbo. So what do you think might happen to Bilbo? And I want you to write this short paragraph on what you think might happen. Okay, good luck, and I can't actually wait to read your predictions. I'm sure everyone will have lots of different and exciting ideas.